why live simply? Why cut back at all, right? And I think this is for spiritual purity reasons. Like there's this Christian idea that this is how you fight selfishness. This is how you tame your desires, right? This is how we get in right relation to the material world. And ironically, this is actually how you enjoy the material world too.
Yeah.
You enjoy feasting after you fasted. If you feast all the time, you actually quit enjoying the material world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's this other reason for voluntary poverty that I think of as like it's in the New Testament, and then there's like a big gap, and then it reappears with St. Francis of Assisi, of this idea that we are doing voluntary poverty for the sake of relying on divine providence. You know, like you're stripping everything away to the point that God's got to save you and God's got to provide for you at each moment, you know?
Yeah.
And that's another reason to kind of live simply and put yourself in a sense at God's mercy. You know, I think that idea deserves a lot of attention. And Simple House has had, and me personally, I've had different ideas about that over the years, but I don't think we can go super deep on that in just a simple living podcast. But so once you decide that simple living is, you know, good for you, or you want to be in right relation to the material world, you actually have to come up with what your goals are. You know, and I mean like a material world type goal. Like it's not enough to just say, I'm just going to keep consuming mindlessly. It's not enough to say, I'm just going to try to not consume at all. Like you actually have to say, what do I need? What does my family need? What should I be doing? And the goal could be something like, I need a dependable car.
Yeah.
Or I want to pay for Catholic school for my kids. Or I want to buy a home. Yeah. Or I want to like all these things I think are pretty reasonable.
Or I want to be more generous with the poor, you know, or with the church or whatever.
Or I'm building a company, not just for wealth, but to create like life-giving jobs, you know, or meaningful jobs for people. Right. Or give more to the poor, build my community out. All those things I think are kind of good goals that are in right relationship with the world and God. Right. Particularly dependable car. Just kidding. But like we all have these ideas, right? Or we need to define these. Like it's not enough to just say I'm going to cut back or I'm going to try to amass more and more. But you actually have to, if you're going to be in right relationship with money in the material world, you actually have to know what the point is, right?
Yeah, so, and you kind of have to understand both of them.
Right, and once you have this goal in mind, you actually have a dollar figure.
Yeah.
You know, like, is this something where you're going to need $5,000 a year to pay for the Catholic school? Is this something where you're going to need $5,000 or $8,000 one time to buy that car? Is this a $100,000 problem, a $10,000 problem, a $1,000 problem? Is it an ongoing problem or is it a one-time problem?
Yeah.
And once you have that, now you have to come up with how you're going to live in order to achieve these goals. This all sounds very basic budgeting, but without this idea of budgeting, this whole living simply thing is very ethereal
it's ambiguous.
and like not grounded.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
Yeah, it's very ambiguous. And I feel like I see a lot of people do things like they feel like they should live simply, or they, you know, they're trying to do the anti-consumer thing. So then they like go out and buy all the like anti-consumer simple products or whatever. And it's kind of like a weird, you know, it's just same exercise with maybe greener cups or whatever.
Right.
And there's not a calculation of, you know, why is this good or why is this helping me or why, you know.
Yeah, there needs to be a calculation here. It should not just be like in the moral realm.
Yeah.
You know, otherwise you don't really know when you've done enough and you'll never be satisfied. Because there's two ways to like become obsessed with the material world. One is by saving. And by cutting back all the time, you're actually obsessing over the material world. Yeah. And another one is by just accumulating without a goal. Yeah. You're also obsessing about the material world without any logical reason. Right. Yeah. So we want to avoid both of these. You can be a great miser and a great sacrificer and be totally obsessed with the material world and not be achieving the freedom you're supposed to be achieving.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think that's like a struggle that people at a Simple House have had, you know, it's like, okay, you're on this like new tighter budget.
Then you just think about your budget all the time and you're not free.
And like worry about it, you know, and right. I mean, some planning is required.
Right.
But
And it also, what this also does for you is, we're going to talk about home economics and things, is the two great ways to achieve your financial goals are to either save money or to make more money, like to either squeeze the lemon or grow the pie, right? Mm-hmm. And once you know your financial goal, be it 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, and be it like over years or a single one-time thing, you now know, like if this idea you have is like, okay, well, to achieve this goal, we'll eat lentils for some months, you know? It's like, well, is that a $10 solution to a $10,000 problem?
Right.
Like you actually know if what you're doing is illogical or logical.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So basically, there is a big spiritual dynamic to this, but there's also like a real world issue here, you know, particularly for families, you know.
Yeah.
Know your goals so that you know your strategies.
Yeah. But I think you might be like separating it a little bit too much to say the practical is not related, you know, or is, you know.
You're saying that the spiritual and the practical are very related here.
Yeah, in the physical world, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think that is true. Like somehow, like you're not going to have freedom in Christ. You're not going to feel like you've done what you should if you're not providing for your family, or if you're not like doing what you need to do to get your family in the place it needs to be, right?
Yeah.
But also, if you're always just trying to like add wealth to your family and not actually saying how much is enough, nothing will ever be enough.
Right.
You know,
right.
I had my spiritual director once told me, he goes, people who believe there's not enough money, there will never be enough money.
Right. Right.
You know?
Yeah.
But if you believe there is enough money, there is enough money.
Yeah.
You know, and that's true. You know, there's also something true though, that like, if you don't have good shelter or don't have dependable transportation, you're always going to be having stress in your life that you need to, figure out, or you're going to have a very rough spiritual life.
Yeah. So. And I think it's like these, you know, maybe I've seen families with kind of smaller pies, live in a way that is like very edifying, you know, and, there's like, happiness and thriving in the family. And I think it's like, you have to ask yourself if the way you're living is like making you stingy or less generous or unhappy, you know, like, yeah.
Right. We're going to have another podcast at some point about wealth and whether or not it's inherently evil or not, which I don't believe it is. But you see people who are in right relation to the material world who have more, and you see people who are right relation who have less, and you see people in wrong relation who have more and wrong relation who have less. Yeah. You know, merely the amount of wealth you have does not fully determine your relationship with the material world. All right.